If being naked was the uniform code for any job, which job would be the most awkward? Dentist. Open wide. Police. You rob a store, run from the scene but turn around and see two naked people sprinting at you. When they catch you, they put you in handcuffs. Where did the handcuffs come from? Beekeeper. Wrestling instructor. Plumber. Mall Santa. The guy that wanders around the sports stadium selling hot dogs. Funeral staff. Fry cook. Hot oil. Not necessarily awkward, but being a firefighter that had to be naked would be terribly inconvenient. High-rise window washer. Astronaut. There is a porn movie for every job described here, I guarantee. Fashion model. They are gonna be so embarrassed that they all wore the same thing. Marriage therapist. What are some effective ways to get a man to stop hitting on you? There's a user on TikTok who shares a method called Baby Runs for President, where you basically ask them very blunt questions with the just shy of rude honesty that a toddler uses. You just keep asking stuff like, what do you do? What's that? Oh really? What's that? Until the person gives up and leaves. Ask him to buy into your MLM scheme. My sister learned this from a friend and started doing this as well. She carried a couple of issues of Watchtower in her purse, and when the guys started hitting on her, got a very earnest look on her face, pulled them out and started saying, have you been saved? Have you accepted Jesus Christ as your personal savior? It worked better than mace. Dinosaur noises. Edit. Thank you for upvotes and awards. I didn't expect to even be noticed. Also thank you for basically telling me it won't work. I loved what the woman said in the film Double Jeopardy. When a guy asked her out, she said, yeah sure, I'll just have to check with my parole officer because I murdered my husband. Once a man was trying hitting on me in a bus. I was feeling very bloated and gassy and burped aloud right in his face like a huge grandma burp. The look on his face was priceless, didn't bother me again. Get really weird, really, really fast. Weird them out so much that they think you're a freak. Defo, don't do it in a sexual way. A friend of mine once did this to a guy who sat at our table on a night out. She went right down in conspiracy theories, asking him why his shoes think he's orange, all sorts of really weird stuff, just to make him uncomfortable enough that he got up and left within a few minutes. It was impressive, actually. A guy was straight up hitting on my girlfriend when I was right there and he wouldn't stop when she asked, so I just started hitting on him. Nice ass buddy, can I get your number and send you some lewd pics? He got super pissed and walked away. I have a boyfriend / married. He's not here. I'm a lesbian. Prove it, kiss this random girl in front me. I am not interested. Playing hard to get. I don't believe in premarital sex. A blowjob is fine. Literally all lines I've tried, the only way I can say that somewhat works is to be a complete bitch, and even then some guys act like you're flirting. I've seen girls use the "do you have a tampon?" with her friend as a guy approached before. Guy spun around faster than I thought possible. Pocket sand. Tell him you're only interested in tall men with high-paying jobs. You want to be a mom ASAP and don't want to work. Demand to see his DL first so you know where to send court documents for child support. Tell the story of how your last boyfriend broke up with you, and how it was crazy of him to freak out just because you stored some of his semen in your fridge just in case. 1. Speak in a foreign language like you don't understand them. Thanks Dutch. 2. Describe the procedure for bull castration in vivid detail. Thanks animal science degree. Edit. Didn't expect this many responses. Dankie vir die Silwer. I speak both some Dutch and Afrikaans, spent some time in SA in college one summer, so it's been helpful. On an additional note, an extra perk of the animal science degree is taking a class where I castrated a rat and kept the preserved test, so I now have insurance for dick pics. Ask if he's ready to be a daddy to the unborn baby you carrying. Why, thank you for all the likes. This unfortunately happened to me at an embarrassing age of 17 and I was awkward and unsure about being a teen parent, and this was how I hid my insecurity. My baby girl is almost 18 and I'm blessed for how she has changed me. Thank you for the awards. Ex-trans people who have detransitioned or in the process of doing so, why? I was a trans man from about 13-19 years old. I socially transitioned and took hormones for the 4 to 6 year period that I was trans. I originally transitioned due to being a GNC kid, presented very masculinely, because I thought that being GNC/masculine and same-sex attracted meant I was trans, due to adults around me talking to me about gender and the possibility I might be trans, 13 at the time of that. I detransitioned because I realized that I didn't legitimately want to be male, I wanted to be able to be masculine. I definitely had social dysphoria and still do. It was the physical part I was confused about. I don't regret all of my transition and appreciate some of the masculinizing effects of the testosterone from when I was on it. I also know that my transition helped me to be able to be masculine/be me. Beforehand I was always pressured to wear a dress, bra, etc. When I transitioned, I was given the freedom to just be me and not have to conform to femininity, which caused me, and still does, great distress. Being trans and my consequent detransition helped me become who I am today. I did legally and medically detransition, but refused to change how I dress/am. Before my transition I had for a short period of time, identified as butch lesbian. Now I decided that probably is the correct label to describe me. Even masculine woman too. But I only see them as a way to describe how I present/act/see myself, I don't let them define me as a person. A part of me, but not the whole of me. Overall, I think my transition and detransition was a big period of growth. I still deal with a lot of dysphoria, but I'm managing it my own way, like lessening it by dressing in men's clothing vs women's. Which does help. I see myself as a woman, due to my sex, but as a masculine woman. I think there ought to be more representation of just plain masculine woman, something I didn't have when I was young. I began to socially transition at 14 years old. It was 2006, and I had spent the previous 3 years swearing I was a boy, and doing my damnedest to act/talk/look like a boy. I didn't know what trans was, or that it existed. I just knew I wanted to not be a girl, I wanted to be a boy because it brought me so much comfort and joy to be seen as male. I met a trans man in 2007 named E. He was 10 years older than me and had medically transitioned. He took me under his wing and I began to secretly look towards medical transition. I mostly hated my breasts. I wanted them gone, I wanted a flat chest that didn't interfere with my clothes and my happiness. Fast forward to 2017, I am still socially out as male but haven't started hormones because of money, homelessness, and the back of my mind feeling that it wouldn't bring me happiness. I still longed for a complete mastectomy, but had no means of achieving it without fully sinking financially/losing my job to recover. No support system. I realized through therapy in 2018 to 2020 that my transition goals had all started at 12 years old because kids picked on me for being an ugly girl, so I thought maybe they wouldn't pick on me as a boy. People still picked on me. I wasn't happy. I'm 30 now and don't really even think about gender on a daily basis, I just exist and look for happiness where I can find it. Edit several hours later to answer the question of where were Goose's parents. By the time I was 14 my parents were in the process of getting a divorce and wondering when I'd grow up, get a job, and move out. They had been done and over with parenting by that point. I latched onto that person and fell hook, line, and sinker for their grooming because it was a positive adult influence in my life when at that time I had none. He was an adult who spoke to me like I mattered and that was all it took for me to hang on every word. Thank you for all the awards. And for the person who sent me a crisis line, thanks for that too, but I assure you after 2 spells of inpatient between end of 21, beginning of 22, I'm doing better than I ever have. I'm still in therapy twice a week and group therapy and I'm working on getting myself out of the shit but my life became. TW, sexual abuse. Not personally trans, but in working as a counselor, 1 or 2 trans people I've worked with that had felt less certain of themselves after or while transitioning, as well as a much larger handful of people who were taking baby steps to transition in the first place, had starting experiences that were kinda half and half, so like around 50% generally just not feeling like they fit their gender or assigned sex at birth, while the other 50% somewhat presented as trying to run away from or reject their own bodies and gender identity as a result of trauma, so not that they didn't feel like they fit their gender anymore, but feeling like they wanted to get far, far away from what that gender meant to them. In these latter cases, these were, sadly, mostly biologically female people that resented their gendered bodies so much as being a factor that allowed or led to them being sexually assaulted or raped, including cases of childhood abuse, i.e. hating themselves for having breasts, hating themselves for not being able to not be seen as female or be perceived in a non-societally sexualized lens or perspective by outsiders, getting catcalled or harassed or ogled by people on the street, etc. Unfortunately, within these specific cases and examples, these people targeting their experiences of gendered violence and avoiding their initial/previous gender as a result of this did not fix the underlying trauma, it didn't reduce their fear or self-hatred or need for self-forgiveness after being victimized, but also, like, living in a society that treats women like sexualized commodities that people are entitled to also does not help the situation. It's really hard. Let's say that your house gets burglarized in a really traumatizing way. A lot of people are going to want to move to a new house, but in this case, you can't. You're stuck in this house where you've had such painful experiences, and the house itself being associated with that scares you. The house didn't do anything wrong, and there's nothing bad about the house itself, it's actually a really great house. It's a complicated process of figuring out how to make our house a home again and to live within ourselves. Focusing on making improvements is almost counterintuitive to the fear response that's happening in these cases, but hey, maybe we go room to room and start working on loving our house again, making it something less scary and something we don't need to run away from. Maybe we buy a couple of happy little plants, maybe we repaint the walls, add some art that makes us happy when we look at it. At the same time, though, it's hard, because we don't want other people to see this too much and to think of breaking in again because of our house being so nice, and honestly maybe we just don't want anyone to ever look at or acknowledge our house in the first place, and we wish that more people would mind their own business, but also, our house being a nice house isn't what led to it getting broken into in the first place. It wasn't our house's fault, it was the fault of the criminal who decided to be a piece of shit and destroy someone's ability to feel safe. No house ever deserves to be broken into or invaded, regardless of how lovely it is, even if the doors and windows are unlocked or are left wide open. Maybe we forgive our house for the bad moments that have happened within its walls, and we learn to see it as guiltless, faultless, innocent. It is a simple, neutral container for everything that exists within it, and no negative judgment needs to come with that. One of the biggest things I've learned as a counselor is how seriously hard it is for people to be gentle with themselves. It's hard for me too. Obviously, the above scenario is not the case for all trans people, and even if it was, trauma doesn't invalidate any of our needs or wants to do things, nor does it make our experiences or reasonings for pursuing transitions as any less valid or less genuine than anyone else's. My thoughts here are just clips of moments from witnessing people's lives and seeing them benefit from looking inwards at their gender and their thoughts related to their gender identity, wanting to help them feel safer within their bodies, regardless of how that outwardly presents. For the record, I don't want any of this to come across as if trans people process their past trauma, they'll learn to accept their gender and stop trying to be someone else, because that's not the message here. It's more so about flexibility, building resilience, building self-forgiveness and acceptance/allowance, understanding our personal needs while granting ourselves permissions to exist beyond labels or judgments or boxes or categories if/as necessary, while also assessing what we want all of these categories to mean to us in the first place. Sorry for writing a book. I lived as a trans man, female to male, for about 5 years. I never started hormones, but I had fully socially transitioned, so the shift back was very significant and very awkward. I have a couple mental health diagnoses that I think if they'd been addressed sooner I wouldn't have felt like I had a hole in my soul I was desperate to fill. It was my error to force a band-aid solution over the problem, but the real issue was that the adults around me ignored my mental health up to that point, not that they let me transition socially, even medically had I chosen to do so. I feel strongly that had I been met with more resistance I would have dug my heels in and may have never realized that I wasn't trans. Edit, to clarify, I mean that had there been more pushback, I would have not realized the truth and would have stayed trans. It was validation that made me eventually realize I was wrong and detransition, not resistance. I don't regret that period of my life. I learned a lot about myself and who I'm not. I had just entered college at the time, and I'm really grateful I had the opportunity to figure this out in an environment where most people accepted me either way. There was a lot of pressure not to detransition, but it was almost exclusively from non-trans people trying to be accepting and dissuade what they thought were my inner demons. It's important to me that when I share this part of my personal history that it isn't weaponized against actual trans people. They welcomed me into their community, and were kind to me when I realized it was not the right place for me. I legitimately owe my life to the kindness and goodwill of the trans community. Edit, spelling. Edit again, a few points that I want to clarify. 1. The mental health crisis I refer to happened when I was a child. 2. Support for being trans was the thing that helped me grow comfortable to realize I was not the pushback. When I was yelled slurs at and ridiculed, that did not make me examine my current situation and try to understand myself better. 3. This is all exclusive my personal experience. I am happy to answer any questions, but I am not trans, and to understand trans people and the trans community you should talk them, not me. Okay, so I was SC'd when I was around 10 years old, so in my mind I thought that if I were a boy, it wouldn't have happened, which I know it's not the case, it can happen to anyone, but I was just a child. Fast forward to 13 years old me, I was sure I was a trans boy, 100%. I came out and for 3 years I lived as Cole. I didn't start hormones, but I had socially transitioned. There were times when I was doubting myself, I wasn't so sure, but I couldn't understand why. The SA part happened again around 16 and it hit me, so I went to my therapist and just told her everything. I spoke to my family and friends. Now I'm almost 19 years old and still healing. I hate when people still call me Cole, but hey, I can't do much about it. It's very complex, but the biggest factor why I started transitioning in the first place is that heteronormativity was forced on me so aggressively as a kid that I genuinely believed the only way I could fit into society was as a woman. As a man I was too soft, bad, empathetic, bad, and gay, very bad. Because of my soft face and voice I also didn't need to change anything except grow out my hair to perfectly pass as a girl, so transitioning seemed like destiny to me. Started transitioning as soon as I left high school. After a year I started taking hormones and the body changes weirded me the F out. I was unsure of my decision and that gave me anxiety attacks every day. I paused the transition for a bit and then decided to give living as a man one last shot. But this time as my own version of a man and according to my own beliefs instead of what I've been taught by society. It worked and never looked back. That was a decade ago. Edit. One thing I would add is that even though I detransitioned rather quickly, I don't regret trying. If I hadn't tried it, it would have always been a big what if question in my life, and I learned a lot from it. Thank you for all the wonderful messages, I read them all and they made me so happy. Long story short, I realized I didn't need to go all in to be comfortable with myself, plus, the crippling self-loathing I had over not looking enough like a cis girl was way worse than my dysphoria was beforehand. In the end I settled to just do whatever the fuck felt right and decided to slap the non-binary label on myself, demi-boy if you wanna get specific, and call it a day. Would I like to magically be born again as a cis girl? Yeah, but that's not how the world works, so I picked the option that in my situation led to the best outcome and I'm now truly happy. Hell, I don't need therapy for my depression anymore, and in just 2 months I'll be off my meds for it, which is something I never imagined possible. While this might not be the best option for most trans people, it was for me. I came out in 2018, trans MTF. I was a really depressed 20-year-old, I had always thought I might be trans, I never felt right in myself since around age 10, I thought coming out and living as a woman would be my cure. So I came out, and for the first 12 months it did, I was happy and I felt less insecure. But after that I went back to feeling depressed, suicidal. Antidepressants didn't really help me, therapy was kinda okay. But it felt like a hole was still there. I ignored it. Once I'm on hormones I'll feel better. 3 years went by, I was on a wait list to get hormones. In the meantime I started gender therapy. My therapist was great. He helped me with confidence and presenting myself, but I still felt wrong and depressed and fucked up in a way I couldn't explain. He found me a job, 6-month paid contract in a charity shop, $25 a week. I was very reluctant. Fucking charity shop? Old people shit, but he pushed me to go for it, so I did. I needed money. Job is a job. For the job I still was presenting as cis male. After the interview for the job I was beaming, they were kind and understanding and everything I didn't expect. I started 2 weeks later. A week after working there it started to hit, my mood and overall depression and anxiety was going down, I looked forward to going in every day. A month in, I felt different, I could talk to people and make eye contact, helping customers, having banter with the manager and volunteers. After 2 months I just knew, I felt where I belong, I didn't feel trans, my dysphoria went away, I was happy being seen as a male, my depression had mostly disappeared, I haven't thought about killing myself. I'm currently onto my 4th month of working there and I'm happy as a male, I told my family and friends, and they understand, I'm glad I didn't start hormones or do anything permanent. I'm just glad to be happy again. I love charity shops, and I've found what I want to do long term. I've got THR chance to manage a new store that's opening and I'm going to grab it with both hands. Not only so I can help the charity but help the community. I'm still bi, and I'm still a LGBTQ and ally. Trans rights are human rights and we should do what we can to get trans people whatever they need to succeed. From hormones to therapy to surgery and safe spaces for them to express themselves without being worried about being hurt. Thanks for reading my dyslexic ass shit. I started HRT to transition from MTF in my mid-30s. I was on it for about a year and a half, almost 2. My experience was great. I had a lot of love and support from my friends and family and I was enjoying all the changes. Then the pandemic happened and my provider team closed and left the state. I had to leave the state as well, and find employment somewhere else. I started a new job, a new healthcare plan, and I had been off of HRT inadvertently for 6 months by the time everything normalized in my life. I started to dream as male again. I realized I wasn't as hormonal and sensitive. When we started working in person again last year, I was presenting as a male again. My new co-workers have only known me this way, and it was admittedly easier than having to explain transitioning a dozen or so different times to different co-workers. Also, my family is still just as supportive. I don't know if I'll retransition or not. The number of negative comments based on semantics is crazy. Can't we assume a question is well-intentioned these days? If we attack everyone who is uninformed on a topic you are close to, how do you hope to gain support and acceptance? It seems really counterproductive. Oh wow, the amount of negative comments on this thread is making me worried for my safety LMAO, but I'll give you an answer anyways. Thought living as a man would finally give me the respect and courage I so desperately wanted in life. I started transitioning when I was 12 and lived as a man until 18. I realized that while I enjoyed being a man, it wasn't really who I was and I could still be respected and loved as a woman, so I detransitioned. While I'm still not 100% happy with myself, I now realize it's not because I'm trans, I'm just generally insecure and always have been. Edit. I feel like I need to specify that I never medically transitioned due to being a minor. I did however legally change my name, use male bathrooms and changing rooms, wore a binder daily, went to a gender therapist and several doctors planning for hormone treatments. I'm not coming at this from a medical angle even though that's probably what OP wanted, I'm coming at this from a social angle, and while it's not as damning as changing your mind after you've gone through hormones, it's still a huge change in life. Hope that clears things up a bit.